I've had this for months and I started it. Hey everybody, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my August wrap-up. So, just in advance, I'm going to apologize if I'm a little bit low energy in this video. It's been a long fucking week, and today is Wednesday, and I just got home yesterday from a long weekend with my husband and a bunch of his friends, and it was a lot of people and a lot of activity, and I am an introvert, and it was a lot. And then on the way home, my car broke down, so that was fun. But we're getting it all figured out. Everything's fine. Everybody's fine. But I'm a little tired today. But still, it's the 5th, so I need to get this bad boy filmed. I read 14 books in August, which is not as good as my 22 from last month, but still nothing to be ashamed of. So these are in no particular order, other than that I'm going to maybe go through the ones that I don't have physical copies of first, because some of them were audiobooks or some of them were library books. So let's just do that. First thing I read this month, and the first thing I'm going to mention here, is Helter Skelter, The True Story of the Manson Murders by Vincent Bugliosi and Kurt Gentry, which I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. I actually read it for a Read Harder challenge for Read a Book of True Crime, and it was really interesting hearing about the Tate LaBianca murders and the Manson family from the perspective of the person who was responsible for prosecuting them. Next is The Little Death by Michael Nava. This is a murder mystery story, and I read it for a Read Harder challenge as well. I read it for Read a Mystery by a Person of Color or LGBT author. It was fine. I didn't hate it. I gave it 3 stars. Sorry, I'm really inarticulate right now. We're just gonna roll with it. The next book that I'll talk about is Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. This was a reread for me. I've read this book a lot of times, more times than I'm proud of, but I love it. It's like a comfort read for me. I gave it 5 stars. I always give it 5 stars. It's just so pure and entertaining, and it just reminds me of my high school self, and I love it. Next, we will talk about Someday, Maybe by Lauren Graham. This is a fiction book that Lauren Graham wrote. I read her nonfiction, Talking as Fast as I Can, at the beginning of the year, and I really enjoyed that, and I liked her writing style and everything, so I decided to give her fiction book a shot, and I enjoyed it. It's like a contemporary sort of romance, but not really. There is romance, but that's not the focus. And the book overall was pretty entertaining. It was about a woman who moves to New York City and is trying to make it as an actress. And I was gonna give it 4 stars, but I actually ended up knocking it down to 3 stars because the ending left me with more questions than I started with, and that's a problem, especially for a book that doesn't have a sequel. Next we have Our Doris by Charles Heathcote. It took me a little while to get through just because the main character, Doris, reminds me so much of my grandmother, but it was really funny, it was really entertaining, and I actually bought the sequel, so I will be reading that very soon because it was a good time. I gave it 4 stars. Next I have The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick. It was fine. It was pretty good. It was entertaining, but not groundbreaking or anything. I wound up giving it 3 stars. Next I have Red Shirts by John Scalzi, which I really enjoyed about 90% of this book. I really like the premise. It's kind of takes this Star Trek trope of the kind of insignificant minor characters dying on away missions for away as a plot device. And it sort of flips it on its head where those characters become the main characters and they're trying to figure out why people keep dying. And it ends up being this whole crazy thing. And I love the premise of this, and I love a lot of the execution. I'm not crazy about the fact that there's really only one female character and she's mostly there because she is the love interest of someone else. So that's a little upsetting. But overall, I really liked most of the characters. I really enjoyed the story. And I didn't have any issues with it until the very, very end, after the main story wrapped up, and then they went on to kind of give you, it's almost like bonus content where you're learning about some other like more secondary characters, and it felt like it just went on for way too long. The book could have been a solid 40-50 pages shorter. It just was like, they could have summed up those parts in like maybe a few pages each and not like 20 or 30 pages each. Personal opinion, it just felt a little bit disjointed from the rest of the story and a little bit meandering. So that would have been a solid 4-star book, but that part kind of just killed it a little bit for me, and so again, I gave it 3 stars. Next I have City of Lost Souls by Cassandra Clare. We've talked about this. I'm not crazy about it, so I gave it 2 stars. All right, next we're going to talk about A Magical Match by Juliet Blackwell. I've had this for a few months, and I started it back in, I think, May, because I was going to read it along with a friend of mine, but we both kind of just kept forgetting about it, and so I finally decided to just go ahead and finish it, and it was really weird, but I liked it. It was fun. This is like a cozy mystery about like witches in San Francisco and murder. It was a fun ride. I gave this 3 stars. Next we'll talk about The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory, which was by far the biggest surprise of the month for me. I gave this book 5 stars. I'm not normally a contemporary romance, bordering on erotica person, but this book was so goddamn cute, I can't handle myself. I just loved this story. It was like a typical rom-com with a lot of sexy times in it, and I don't know, I just enjoyed the characters and the romance that develops between them. It was just exactly what I needed at the time that I read it, and I loved it. I loved it so much. Next, I have Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I did not enjoy this book. It's like well written. The language is beautiful and I understand why it's a classic, but it wasn't for me. I gave it 2 stars. Next, we're going to talk about another very good book that I read this month, and that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was another 5-star read for me. This book was so good. I loved it. It's worth all the hype you've been hearing about it. If you haven't read this yet, you should read it. All right, next we were going to talk about Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This is the 2nd Jane Austen book I've ever read. I've read this and Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is okay, but not my favorite. This I really enjoyed. It's like a parody of Gothic fiction, and it was just really fun to read. There were a lot of misunderstandings, and there was just a lot of sarcasm and sass from the main love interest in this, and it just was a good time. I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4 stars. And finally, last but certainly not least, I have Pat the Great Cat, A Jaguar's Journey, which I talked about in my Read Harder update because I read this for my book about nature. This is about a jaguar that was living at the Milwaukee County Zoo, and he came here from Belize, and this is a book that tells his life story. It's written in English and Spanish, mainly for children, but it's pretty informative, and it was really well done, and I liked the illustrations, and I enjoyed it. I think I gave this one 4 stars as well. That's everything that I read in the month of August, unless I forgot something, which I do not believe I did, but it's possible. So moving into September, I've got a couple books I'm waiting to finish, and then we'll be going into Tome Infinity and Beyond. I'm just gonna get out of here because I'm being like really fucking weird today, but you know, if you want to talk to me, you can find me on social media. There'll be links in the description. If you enjoyed this fucking bullshit for some reason, you can go ahead and hit subscribe. That would be cool. Have a great day. Bye.